Chapter 8. I arrived on foot at Brindalock just as the sun was setting. Redcliffe, true to his word, had brought me all the way to the orchards, and I had walked the rest of the way home alone. I recognized several of our tenants, but from their cold reception, I doubt any of them recognized me. In my filthy traveling clothes and unwashed hair, I appeared exactly like a gypsy. I didn't mind. I wasn't in the mood for friendly greetings or cheery inquiries. Brindalock had been built 400 years ago on the foundations of the first home. At some point, an addition had been made, making the place less of a foreboding monument, but still stark and lonesome. But it was the place I had been born, and I loved every crumbling stone. Winter made the old place look particularly uninviting, but now that spring was here, ancient roses softened the corners where they crawled up the walls with red tendrils. The magnolia tree was on the cusp of bursting into bloom, and when it did, all spring would follow with color and warmth, playing around the grounds of the house like a joyful child to its more silent and grayer parent. I did not go to the front of the house. The giant doors there would only lead me to the old hall, which was cold all year round, even at the height of summer. Instead, I went around to the kitchen gardens and walked in through a humbler entrance, a split door over a stone threshold. The kitchen at Brindalock was a long room with a low ceiling and whitewashed walls. And there, with her massive arms immersed in a tub full of greasy water, was Jelly. When she heard the door open, she turned and glared at me with marked indignity. "Just who do you think you are, coming around here and begging at decent folks' homes? Get out of my kitchen before I fetch my switch." "Jelly," I laughed, "it's me." Her wet hands flew to her face. "Heavens! Miss Blackwood, has the world turned upside down?" She quickly grabbed a towel, dried herself off, and came running at me with open arms. As always, she squeezed too hard. Jelly was a large woman who could pick up a whole pig by herself, and I heard something crack in my back. As soon as she let go, she took my face in her still damp hands and started rubbing my cheeks with her towel. "Shame on you for coming here in this state. What trickery is this?" "Where is everybody?" "At supper, all but your mother. She's sickly again, and we've put her to bed. I just came down from taking soup to her room. But how did you get home, and how did you manage to get so dirty?" By now I had spotted the scones on the table. I dove for one and started stuffing it in my mouth before she could chide me for my dirty hands. "I took the pass," I said between chews. "Child, not alone." "Of course not," I said, trying to swallow, but it ended up being a very uncomfortable trip, and now I'm dying for a bath. Will you help me carry some water to my room?" But she only sat down on a chair. "Did you see any of them robbers?" "Naturally," I said, grabbing another scone, "dozens of them." "How did you survive?" I moved to the shelves and found a cup. "By my wits and my brawn, of course. Come on, Jelly. I promise I'll tell you all about it later, but I really want to wash before my family sees me like this." She got to her feet. So you should. A disgrace to the eyes, that's what you are. I'll send Darrell up with the tub. Oh, did you see the soldiers as you came in?" I choked on my scone. "What soldiers?" "Hundreds of them, or so they say. I've only seen a handful. But they showed up 2 days ago, going to all the houses and asking questions. Most of them about young Mr. Easton." "What kind of questions?" I said, opening the larder for some milk. "Demanding to know if we'd seen him. Well, when they came here, I said to them, 'Why, no, Mr. Easton is in Ottleton.'" "And then what did they say?" I said as I started pouring the milk. Jelly took the cup from me and said, "Here, let me warm that." I took it back from her. "I like it cold. What did they say?" She muttered something about picking up bad habits out west before answering me. "They said that if we were to see him, we were to report it right away. Strangest thing that's happened in these parts in my time. What would Western soldiers be doing here looking for Sir John Roberts' son?" I poured milk into my cup and drank some. I have no idea. Just then, Trudy came into the kitchen, walking backwards through the doorway with a soup urn in her arms. She turned around, saw me, and cried, "Miss Blackwood, is that you?" Trudy had been a servant at the house since I was 11. She was in her late 20s now, but she still seemed to have that girlish wonder glued to her face. Everything seemed to surprise, then delight her. I was no exception. She let out a shrill cry of joy, slopping soup on her apron as she jumped up and down. "Quiet, girl," Jelly ordered. "Miss Blackwood don't want any unwanted attention from the family till she's properly washed and dressed again." "Oh, but the bedroom ain't been aired out yet. I'd best run and hang some linens out before it's dark, for there ain't nothing fresh in the house to put on your bed." She put down the soup. "Oh, your mother will be that happy when she sees you. Nothing like a homecoming to make a person feel right as rain. And wait till you see young Anne. She's grown 2 whole inches since you was here last. But, Miss Blackwood, how did you come to be so filthy? Did your coach overturn?" "Linens," Jelly barked. Trudy nodded and then flew back into the hallway, skipping as she went. She'll be singing in the hallway, mark my words, Jelly said, shaking her head. No matter how many times I warn her, she won't stop singing. She turned to me. Here, grab this bucket and carry it upstairs. I'll be up in a minute with more. I kissed her on the cheek. Thanks, Jelly. It's good to be home again. It really is. Ah, you smell like horses and smoke. I hefted up the bucket and was just heading up the back stairs when Trudy rushed into the room with a quick, "Oh, miss, I'm sorry." Right on her heels, Uncle William burst into the room. He stood there, filling up the doorway with his presence. My uncle was a tall man with a narrow face and dark hair streaked with gray. It seemed to me he must have stopped smiling sometime in his early 30s, because the muscles in his face didn't seem to work in that direction anymore. He stared at me for several seconds. "Lisbette, what in the world is this? What are you doing here, dressed in those clothes? Why aren't you in Ottleton?" I put down the bucket, careful not to drop any water. I took my last exam and decided I wanted to come home, so here I am, home. "But you're filthy. What did you do, walk?" "No, I rode, through the pass." "The pass?" he said, making the pots and pans rattle on their hooks. I had prepared myself for this. "That's right, I took the pass." "Not alone." I hesitated. "No, I met with Ben Redcliffe, and he took me home." "Ben Redcliffe, Bob's son?" "Oh, it was all very proper. His wife and son were there, too." I had no idea Ben was living in Ottleton. "He doesn't. He lives near the border." I didn't bother mentioning which side of the border. "I don't like this. What would possess you to take the pass, not to mention traveling with tenants?" I picked up my bucket. "Uncle William, I'd be happy to tell you all about it after I've had a bath. As you can see, I'm in sore need of it. Now, if you don't mind, I'll just go upstairs and start cleaning up." "I suppose you saw Clays and Gerard before you left Ottleton." I carefully averted my eyes. "Yes, I did. They stopped in to bring me my letters." "And why, then, may I ask, did you not go home with them?" "They were taking a boat, and I was in a hurry to get home. Besides, the pass was beautiful this time of year, and—" "I'm very displeased with you." His voice was trembling. "Were you aware that soldiers from the West have been scouring the country? If you had fallen into their company, who knows what might have happened? And now young Redcliffe will be spreading tales, and the whole village will know that my niece disgraced herself by putting herself at risk." What followed was the awkward and familiar silence that always came from after one of Uncle William's speeches. He let it hang in the air for several painful moments before finally saying, "Go and clean up. The rest of the family will wait for you in the drawing room." "Thank you, Uncle William." "And Lisbeth, we will speak of this again." He turned around and disappeared down the hall. As soon as he was gone, Jelly turned on Trudy and said, "You were singing in the halls, weren't you?" She nodded tearfully. "I couldn't help it. I was so happy at Miss Blackwood being home and all. Well, then the master, he calls me and he asks me what all the noise is about, and I daren't tell him anything but the truth." "Oh, don't cry about it, Trudy," I said, lugging the bucket toward the stairs. "I knew he'd be grumpy when he saw me. At least now the worst is over. Hopefully." To distract her from crying more, I asked her to help me carry the water upstairs. Just before we started up the steps, I let a straw spill and then placed it between my teeth so that I could use both hands to carry the bucket. We went through the dark, narrow hall that led to the east wing and then down the broader family corridor to my bedroom. When we passed my mother's room, we were both careful not to make any noise. I did not know if she was awake or not, but I didn't want to startle her by my travel-worn appearance if she was sick again. In my room, I found the candle beside my bed and lit it with my spill. Once there was light, I took a minute to look around. It was stale and chilly, but wonderfully homey. Years before my time, someone had hung green wallpaper. Now it was a faded, watery pattern that no longer matched the bed curtains or upholstery, but it still reminded me of apples in late summer. Above the mantel were my books and mirror, all as they always were. On the wall over the dressing table was the little miniature of my grandmother as a girl, her smile still hiding secrets.